Warning, the following program is designed for casual wrestling fans and is meant purely for entertainment. If you're SAWFT, proceed at your own risk. Viewer discretion is advised.
Brother, I'm going on a wild Hulk Hogan. If all I get's a moment, I'll make sure it's an explosion. Cause lately I've been seeing stars, trying to kick out on this jaw cord. But it's no holds barred, middle fingers like a...
What is up, everybody? It is your boy WETOODEEP, and we are back for the first episode of season number 4 of the Slap and Mead Wrestling podcast. We're back. We're better than ever. About 10 days since the last episode, so it's only been like a week, but it's felt like a lot longer. We've had some time to take a break from the podcast, and in terms of me and Wavy D, we ain't done one of them, and it's gonna be about a month, right? And so that starts back up on Tuesday. We're back on the grind on Tuesday, me and Wavy D with the Tuesday episode. Season 4 going to be just the same as season 3 was, me and Wavy D on Tuesdays. On whatever other day that I can get it around and record, typically Fridays, you'll get another episode. I hope everyone's had a good Christmas, had a good New Year's, and I hope you've enjoyed debut week of WWE programming in 2025 so far. That's what we're going to discuss. Smackdown last Friday, Monday Night Raw this past Monday, and Tuesday's episode of NXT New Year's Evil. That's on the docket to discuss. We got a couple other things. Friday shows are typically where I save my rants for. I got a couple other topics that I want to talk about and break down outside of reviewing debut week. The first thing that I want to get to is our housekeeping. As always, the links are in the description. WWE Shop and Expedia affiliate links. Click those links in the description, and that will take you to the normal websites, and you'll purchase like normal through that link. And we'll get a small percentage of the purchase price. Just a way to support the podcast, right? The next thing as well is join the Discord. Join the Discord. That link is also in the description as well. The Junkyard Media Group Discord page where myself, Wavy D, the Beyond the Junkyard boys, K-Dog and James are in there sometimes. We need some more people to join it to have a more enlivened, more live conversations. And there's quite dry at the moment, if I'm being honest. But the more people that join, the better the conversations are. And so the first thing is Tuesday when me and Wavy D get in. We typically end the Tuesday show with the segment we call Thirsty Tuesday. And typically, we've done this in bracket styles over the last 3 brackets. We did a women's wrestler bracket, a men's wrestler bracket, and we just got done probably about a month ago. At this point, we just got done with the celebrity female edition of the bracket, right? And so we're back to female wrestlers, and I'm going to go ahead and announce this will be the last bracket style of Thirsty Tuesday that we'll do. It's sort of just worn itself out. The segment itself is sort of, played out its stay on the show, and so we'll do this last one and then we're going to change Thirsty Tuesday to something different, sort of I'll find a new a new segment to end the show that I think will, that could freshen it up a little bit, along those lines. So what I want to do is present how Thirsty Tuesday will work. And so this bracket, if you are in the Discord, this is why joining the Discord is so important. If you want to be a part of this community in the Discord, I announced this and I said, hey, here's this Google form link. Click this link. You guys are going to vote for who is going to be the participants in this final bracket of Thirsty Tuesday. You guys are going to pick, right? The first one I picked, the first female wrestlers, the first male wrestler, like the first two brackets I picked. The celebrity one, I had Wavy D pick 16, I picked 16. And a constant, I guess, argument or complaint against it that I've been getting is, well, some of the people y'all have been picking have been sort of mid, not the best, right? Okay, that's fine. So here's the solution, right? I'm going to put the whole roster in a Google form. Y'all pick, y'all vote. And I set it up to where y'all could vote as many times as you guys could have literally voted 100 times each every single day, right? With the idea of, okay, we'll figure out who the Discord likes by who they vote for. Well, we really didn't get a lot of participation in that. And then maybe I didn't make it clear enough that you can vote multiple times. We didn't get a lot of participation. I'm going to be honest, I'm part of the Discord, so I count in the vote, right? And so I voted 2-3 times a day. And for about 3 or 4 days in a row, then I realized, you know what? No one else is really going to vote. I don't have to bank up certain superstars. I'm the only one voting. So I don't want people to complain when this bracket doesn't turn out. Y'all have the opportunity to vote as many times as you guys wanted to vote, and y'all didn't take the opportunity to do so. Nah, I don't want to hear any complaints about it. Doesn't hurt my feelings. So what we have is we have 8 superstars representing Raw and SmackDown main roster. We have 8 superstars representing NXT, 8 representing AEW, and 8 representing TNA. And I have those lists, right? We have, for NXT, we have Stephanie Vaquer, Jada Parker, Carmen Petrovic, Sol Ruka, Julia, Jasmine Nix, Tatum Paxley, and Cora Jade. I think that's a very strong 8 from NXT. From TNA, we have Steph DeLander, Gia Miller, who's their backstage interviewer, also does some ring announcing as well. Zaya Brookside, Jordan Grace, Danny Luna, Killer Kelly, Savannah Evans, and Tessa Blanchard. Not as strong from this side, but they really don't necessarily have. There's a lot of women on the roster, but a lot of people that I think people like, maybe Ash by Elegance or Heather by Elegance could probably have been on this list if there was more voting. I just don't think people recognize names at all, right? SmackDown and Raw, the main roster, we have Jade Cargill, Maxine Dupree, Liv Morgan, Tiffany Stratton, Dakota Kai, Bianca Belair, Kathy Kelly, and Chelsea Green. This is probably the strongest team we have. Any one of these 8 could win the tournament, right? NXT and SmackDown and Raw main roster right now are really cooking, right? And then from AEW, you have Julia Hart, Britt Baker, Harley Cameron, Chris Statlander, Anna Jay, Red Velvet, Mariah May, and Alicia Tout, which, if y'all don't know, that's MJF's girlfriend. Used to work for MLW, where MJF caught her, what was it, like Sweet Tits or something like that. I don't know. That's where I first recognized her from, right? But she does some backstage stuff with AEW. So on each team outside of NXT is the only one that has 8 full-time wrestlers, no backstage announcers. But TNA has a ring announcer, interviewer, Kathy Kelly for main roster, and then Alicia Atout for AEW, right? So we're allowing anyone that's on the roster that appears on the show, right? Those are your 32 competitors. And here's how it's going to work. Each week, we will do a matchup from each subsection, right? So we'll do an NXT, a TNA, a main roster, and an AEW matchup every single week. Right, so the first round will be 4 weeks. The second round would be the next 2 weeks. That'll give us to the finals of each, or basically what would be the quarterfinals, right? And what we're essentially going to do is we're going to get to the final four. We're going to have a representative from each bracket. You can say, consider this like 4 small brackets, and we'll take the winner of NXT, the winner of TNA, the winner of main roster, the winner of AEW, and we're going to put them in a fatal 4-way vote, right? And that's how we will determine the winner, right? And which team has the strongest representation, right? And so I say this from the get-go. When the bracket, or when we start this on Tuesday, right? You're voting on looks. Sure, you can vote on whatever. What I say is you're voting on attractiveness, and that's subjective. What is attractive to you, right? If it's just a physical looks thing to you that's attractive, vote on that. If there's a character, personality type thing that's attractive to you, vote on that, right? But the Discord's going to play a part in this. Yeah, so that's how Thirsty Tuesday is going to work. We'll get to our final 4. We'll do a fatal 4-way voting to determine the winner, and that is how Thirsty Tuesday will work for this final bracket. And then going on from here, we'll probably do something like along the lines of like, the slapping meet, like final 4, right? And then I'll pick a different like category every week, and it could be like final 4 women's wrestlers, in-ring ability or whatever, right? And so it would be a different category. It could be food, wrestling, whatever, right? And so that is, that probably will be the segment that replaces Thirsty Tuesday. Just because I feel like that's a little bit more open-ended in the voting. More people will participate in that than voting on like the hottest woman or whatever, right? And so let's get to the first rant of the night. And then we'll recap debut week. So the first rant of the night goes on from a conversation that was had probably 3, 4, 5. It's probably been closer to a week ago in the casual wrestling community Discord page. And my brother, Junkyard James, had posted something about Mercedes Moné winning. She's like a triple champion now. What is it? TBS champion, Rev Pro, and Shimmer, or something like that, right? And talking about how she's like the belt collector. And someone in the group had mentioned, how, going overseas and collecting all the overseas titles is sort of like someone who's won, I forgot what sport they used, but basically saying it's like a pro American athlete who's at the top of his game going overseas and winning titles there, right? And that was sort of his argument. James came back and gave an argument, talking about soccer and how and all of this. And here's my problem with both of them. Like, I think both of their analogies fail for one reason, and that's sort of the caption of this segment is wrestling isn't like sports. What do I mean by that? Right? So often we have people that are like, oh, the sport of pro wrestling isn't a sport. It's an entertainment form. It's an art. It is closer to Broadway musical than the NFL. Right? Are the people who participate athletic? Sure. Is this an athletic competition? No. It is an entertainment form. It is as much athletic competition as Cirque du Soleil is, right? You have to be athletic to do Cirque du Soleil. You have to be able to perform at high levels. I will not take that away from you. But I would not consider you an athlete in the way that a football player or a basketball player is an athlete, right? You're an entertainer. That is, the entire business has been predicated on entertainment, right? And so wrestling is not a sport. It isn't like sports. We have to stop watching wrestling as if it is a sport, because it is not a sport. It is an entertainment form. So when I watch wrestling, right, I don't care about titles. As long, like, who has the titles or how many you have, or even how many times excuse me, you've won a title. None of that really matters to me, right? Like this whole thing with John Cena getting 17. It would be cool because it's a record and all of that. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. It's as long as there's a story there, it's good television. No matter if you have it for a week, 2 weeks, 7 weeks, 100 and something days, 1,300 days, or ever how long, right? And so that's where I'm at with it. Like, wrestling is storytelling, and if without the storytelling, wrestling is just a bunch of grown men and women fake fighting for zero reason, right? It's not MMA, it's not UFC and Bellator and boxing. It's none of that, right? It is it physical? Does it hurt? Sure. I'm not sitting here and saying that no one doesn't get hurt and that you don't have to be. Absolutely. You know, that's why athletes transition to wrestling so much better than people who aren't athletic, right? That's why people who do pro athlete or even at an amateur, collegiate level of athletics, that's why they, I believe that's why someone like an Obafemi, I think he did track and field at Alabama. I think that's why he, or someone like Sol Ruka or Kalani Jordan, who were collegiate gymnasts. I think Sol Ruka was at Oregon. Kalani Jordan was at Michigan State, I believe. That's why they transitioned to wrestling so much better, because it is a certain lifestyle, a certain way of preparation, and they're definitely athletes. In terms of like the more athletic you are, the better I think you'll be at wrestling. But the activity in and of itself, like pro wrestling, is an entertainment form. All the athleticism in the world means nothing if you're not telling me a narrative or a story to make me care about why you're fighting. Because at the end of the day, it's so a predetermined, and I know this is going to trigger some people. It's predetermined fake fighting. Oh my God, he said the F word. Yeah, it's a fake fight that takes place within a narrative. And if the narrative isn't there, right, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all if the narrative isn't there. So that's my take on this, right? Like, who cares how many titles Mercedes Moné has? She didn't earn them. They're props. They don't mean nothing. If there's no story as to why I should care about her being champion, then first off, I'm not watching. But second, like, why should I care about her winning Rev Pro or New Japan or Stardom or anything like that when I don't watch that product? Like, so I don't think it makes her more desirable as an entertainer to bring her back to WWE or to even cheer for her in AEW just because she goes to Japan, wins a title that most people who watch wrestling on a mainstream level haven't even heard of that title, right? So I don't necessarily think it matters, especially because I look at titles as props, right? I'm just going to give an example, right? If I was a wrestler and I had a match, and we just saw this with Punk and McIntyre over a bracelet, but I could take something as simple as this pin and say this is a prop. We're going to put on a match. The winner, is the winner of the match gets the pin, and whoever has the pin has whatever type of power to sign off on. We could come up with a story behind it. And, right, we just saw that with Roman Reigns and Solo Sikoa with the Olafala, right? I had some people, some friends of mine who were like, well, this feud is stupid. Why are they fighting? They're not even fighting for a title. You're right. They're not fighting for a title, but the titles are just as much as props as the Ulafala is. And I would say the Ulafala has more of a significance in the individual story of Roman Reigns and Solo right now than any title ever would, right? Because whoever won that match and became tribal chief, that has significance in the story, right? And we'll get to that conversation. You know, that's probably a good transition to get over to debut week. So let's talk about it. We'll talk about SmackDown first, from last Friday, and so I am probably the very last podcast of all wrestling podcasts to cover my thoughts on last week's Friday night SmackDown, and I'm recording it 3 hours before the next episode of SmackDown comes on, right? And I did this sort of on purpose. I wanted to sit on it, hear everybody else's, but I also I record shows on Friday, right? So I wanted to get all of debut week over with before I could put it all in one podcast, right? So let's get into it. So the first overall statement is 3 hours of a Friday night SmackDown is super long when the show is as mid as the show was. This was a very mid show. So you start with Cody and Drew. I don't have much to say about it other than Cody is boring on the mic to me. I don't quite like Cody Rhodes. I'm not a Cody Rhodes fan, never really have been. I think when he was most interesting when he was chasing the title, finishing the story was his story. And then he did it, and WWE hasn't transitioned him into anything to make me care about this title run, right? And so, you know, part of me hopes that Kevin Owens wins at Rumble. We have a champion that somewhat matters, and we can get some decent storyline coming out of it, right? But my first big note is Shinsuke Nakamura. He's not it, guys. He's not it, right? So part of the reason I wanted to wait is to hear what someone like Notorious Nerdy D in the Casual Wrestling Podcast had to say about this, right? Because I've said this numerous times over the first 3 seasons of this podcast. I view wrestling as a spectrum, right? And so on your far left, you have your hardcore wrestling fans who, you know, they watch every show. They go to every live event that they can in their city. They go to indie shows. Anything that says wrestling, they're in the building, right? You don't ever have to worry if they're going to watch. If it says wrestling on the marquee, they're there, right? On the far right, you have your uber casuals, maybe tune in, you know, in like religion, you have what are known as creasters, right? People who only go to church on Christmas and Easter. They're the creasters, right? Well, these are your what I would call your big four watchers, right? These are the far right, maybe the people who tune in for WrestleMania, maybe a Royal Rumble, maybe a SummerSlam, but they're not watching the in-between, right? Maybe a Survivor Series if you can get them interested in that, but they're mainly watching like Rumble and Mania, maybe catching a Raw every now and then when football's not on, maybe catching a SmackDown every now and then if they want to, but they're definitely not digging deep into the product, right? And then everything else in between, because not everyone fits either of those designations. And what my issue that I have with some fans is that they try to put everybody in the wrestling universe in one of those two boxes. And so if you're super, you know, if you're a little bit more any level of hardcore more than what I just described as super casual, then in some people you're the IWC, you're hardcore, right? And then vice versa, if you only watch the pay-per-views or the PLEs and you don't really watch the week-to-weeks, or you, right, some people in the IWC will label you as you know, not a fan or a casual, and that's not how fandom works, right? So like I find myself on the spectrum, if I had to place myself somewhere close to like a moderate middle, where I would consider myself casual because of how I view the product, but I watch the show every week and I discuss it and I have conversations and I think about it, and I'm willing to have conversation and argument over, the TV show. But at the end of the day, I recognize what the product is. It's a TV show. The matches, in the end of the day, the matches really don't matter. It's all predetermined storytelling, and as long as you give me a good story, right? And so to some, I'm casual. I'm not a real fan, and I'm the problem with wrestling, right? The problem is wrestling is a spectrum. And so I try to find my baseline, being that I'm in between both of those parties, by listening to representation of both of those parties, or are people close to that, right? And so someone like Nerdy D claims to represent the casual audience, and he does a very good job, I believe, of dissecting wrestling the way a casual fan would, right? But he also has great insight from a business perspective, as someone who does run a business, and so he looks at wrestling from like a real life sort of like business perspective, right? And so I go to him to watch that, right? But then I can sit and listen to someone like Maven or Stevie Richards or Eric Bischoff, or some of these more people, what I would call like the wrestling bubble, or someone like Junkyard James, and listen to someone like that, and Jim Cornette, and get sort of that level of IWC perspective. And I may not disagree a lot more with that section than with like a Nerdy, but I try to set my baseline to see where's my opinion, right? I claim to be casual. Am I in the right stratosphere, right? And it sort of plants myself. Like, am I being too hardcore? Am I thinking about this the way a hardcore fan would be, as someone who used to be super hardcore and nerdy about wrestling, right? And I do claim to be a casual fan, and I claim to do a show for casual fans, right? And so, but I say all of that because Nerdy D likes the Shinsuke gimmick, right? He does. He thinks it's the over the top Shinsuke gimmick. If they continue down the line, he said he's sort of into it. This is going to be one of those things that I disagree with Nerdy D about. I just don't think Shinsuke's it. The language barrier plays a huge part in it, but there's no storyline here. The character's fine, the costumes are fine, but if you don't give me a reason to watch the matches, I don't care about you, right? Right, and it's hard to care about them when all your promos are vignettes that I have to read the screen. And guys, I'm not afraid of subtitles. I watch television with subtitles. Like if I were to tune on Netflix and watch a movie or a comedy special, I'm turning on the subtitles. Now, if I'm watching something live, I turn the subtitles off. But like if I were to go in and watch like the new Gabriel Iglesias comedy special, the subtitles are coming on so I can read the words and make sure I hear the joke correctly, right? Or if I were to go on NBC on Peacock and watch Based on a True Story, which is a fantastic show, by the way, subtitles were on to make sure to make sure I'm understanding what's being said, right? I'm not against subtitles. I'm against subtitles being your crutch because you can't speak English. And a lot of times your promos don't really say much of anything. And so what I find myself doing is when a Shinsuke segment comes on, reaching for the phone, pulling it out and scrolling on Twitter, right? And so that is my issue with Shinsuke. It's not connecting with any level of the fan base to seem compelling. And Shinsuke's not it. He's got to drop the title. This U.S. title picture is bad because they focused so much on solely the main event picture and the bloodline and Cody Rhodes, and they're fantastic stories, but they haven't really given me much of anything in the mid-card, right? You haven't given me, this would have been a perfect opportunity to have Montez Ford come out and answer like an open challenge and win the title, and maybe potentially start a feud with Dawkins down the line because he gets jealous, right? Or making a new star in Carmelo Hayes on the main roster, or doing something down the line. You did like a best of 7 that, I joke around with listener Starry Night Sky about that being her favorite segment of 2024 was the best of sevens, right? Between Andrade and Carmelo, but nothing came out of it. You got Shinsuke winning the title instead, right? So Shinsuke's not it, right? The next big thing that happened on the show, in between all of this, Michin and Piper had a match. Doesn't really feel like it matters. A week down the line, I don't think anything really happened with that match that really means anything. Obviously, we'll probably get one more match between Chelsea and Michin. And I think that leads to, Chelsea winning, Piper potentially turning around the time of Rumble or Chamber, right? And then we get the turn, we get the Mania match. Or that's where I believe it's headed. But the next major thing here is we had Naomi versus Nia Jax for the women's championship. Guys, anyone with a basic knowledge of storytelling and any basic recollection of an understanding of wrestling history knew a cash-in was coming on this episode. You put in a title match, right? Tiffy's not a part of the show at any point. She's missing. Guys, a cash-in's coming. We're done with the teases. It's the first episode of the new year. SmackDown's leading off debut week. And you get this match, and you get it's Tiffy time. And Tiffy comes down with Ryan Tran, the referee, only to sort of like knock him out, grab the briefcase back, sort of pump fake us, hit Naomi with it. No, that knocks her out. Right. Naomi's out. We get the little, was it like the Yokozuna bomb or whatever, that Nia Jax does as her finisher. That wins her the title. She then hits, Tiffy then hits Nia in the back with the briefcase, takes out Candice LeRae. Bianca comes in, hits the KOD, which she then gets snatched up out of the ring by Tiffany. Tiffany then goes over and officially cashes in. The bell rings. She hits the prettiest moonsault ever, wins the title, and we get the big moment, right? I have two issues with this, though, that I want to talk about. Perfect segment, the swerve of, pretending to cash in, knocking out the ref, waiting to the end of the match, and then doing it. Perfect swerve. It was smart. It was logical. Two issues that I have with it, though. And they're maybe not necessarily like big things, but just something that annoyed me. The thing that annoys me the most is, and this happens every time a cash-in happens, the person gives the referee the briefcase. They take an hour and a half, it feels like, to go over and ring the fucking bell. Right? Tiffany was sitting there. We're waiting for like 45 seconds. And I kid you not, I'm staring at the television, just screaming, ring the bell. Right? And then Julian gets on the mic, and Tiffany Stratton's cashing in her Money in the Bank contract. And then we're still waiting for the bell to ring. Like, when she cashes in, the whole idea is it's supposed to be a sneak attack. Why is the bell not initially ringing? Like, we know what's happening. Just ring the bell. Right? She hands the briefcase over to the referee immediately. And I get she has to get in the ring first for a match to start. That's fine. Right? But as soon as she gets in the ring, Nia's already in the ring. Ring the bell. It's supposed to be a sneak attack. Just ring the bell. Right? So Tiffy hands it to Ryan Tran outside the ring. She runs back in. She rolls into the ring, stands up in the corner. He should have rung the bell at that point because they're both in the ring. It's a cash-in, so the match has to start. Nia doesn't have to be ready for it. You do the moonsault, you end the match, right? But we wait for it. My other thing, and this is the bigger complaint that I have, is that this should have main evented SmackDown. Because what you put on after, the segment after was a 6-man tag. It was Jacob Solo and the Tongan that's not hurt, Tama Tonga, versus, was it Jimmy, Sammy, and Who the fuck else was part of this team? Cody? I don't actually know, to be honest with you. I don't remember, to be honest with you. It doesn't matter. Here's why. Because the match was very fucking boring. And this should have been in the middle of the show, because all this was leading up to was to promote Solo fighting Roman on Monday. Right? And so you should have ended the show with Tiffany Stratton at the top of the final visual this debut episode of SmackDown should have had was Tiffany Stratton at the top of the stage, holding the title up, fireworks going off, graphic in the background, new women's champion Tiffany Stratton, and that should have been the picture you sent the people home with. That should have been the picture, right? Those are my two complaints for SmackDown. Other than the fact that this show had 7 segments. We went over the ones that I thought were necessary to go over, but we had like a Paul Heyman promo, really wasn't important. But this show had 7 segments. Only one was interesting, and that was Tiffany Stratton, right? We then get on, was it the Pat McAfee show on Monday? SmackDown's going back to 2 hours. So thank God, because 3 hours was way too much when 50, I think the final total of commercials were like 54 minutes. So essentially all it was Triple H was like, I'm going to book a 2-hour show. I'm going to write a 2-hour show, and we're just going to add 30 more minutes of commercials in it and pretend, right? We're going to let them do another hour of commercials, because essentially what we got was a 2-hour show with an hour worth of commercials. And so 3 hours was too much. I was a big proponent of it if they were going to tell stories, but I don't think they're interested at this moment of building SmackDown to have a deep mid-card. And that's the issue, because the main event can only do so much of your card, right? So let's transition to Netflix, because this has a lot more to talk about, in my opinion. Right? So the first thing that comes out is it's the Netflix debut. We don't really know how long this thing is going to be, right? And then it comes out, the plan is like 3 to 3.5 hour show. And so we're all just sitting there like, we're going to have to camp out tonight, aren't we? Right? The show was 30 minutes out. I turned on Netflix. We get this cool little countdown screen. The show will start and blah, 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 blah. Right? And they're playing like old school footage and all of this in the background of the screen. And it's really cool. It's a lot better than how AEW does Max, which they're streaming on Max, right? 0 promotion, by the way, for it at all. You got to go and search for it, right? But if you turn on Max with AEW, you'll just get a blue screen that says your product or your show will start soon, right? And then whenever you get commercials on TV, you don't get commercials on Max. It's just a blue screen that says we'll return after commercial break, right? At least we got commercials on Netflix to keep people somewhat interested. Unless you're overseas and you got nothing, which is fantastic, and right, but we get to the show. The show. I'm sitting here waiting 30 minutes prior to the show. I'm like, man, I gotta go get the snacks, dog. We about to camp out. We got some soda, some water. We got like some chips. Everything set up to last me the night, right? And by this point, everyone knows what we got with Monday Night Raw, right? Like I said, I'm probably the last person talking about this show. Everyone and their mother is giving a opinion on what we got going on this show, right? I'm the last one to speak about it, probably. I'm 5 days removed from the show actually happening, right? And so we're not really going to do it in order. I have this written down and I wrote down the card, and then I just added the different segments that were added in between, right? Excuse me. So we'll start, though, at the beginning. We got a really cool video that played to start the show. We had a curtain around the ring, and then, the video finished. It told the story of WWE, essentially, which was really cool. The video ended, fireworks went off, pyro went off, the curtain fell down, Triple H is standing in the ring, right? So the first thing you guys got to know is, Netflix is paying for production, dog. In WWE came in and said, look, our production better than anything you'll see in sports entertainment. Production was perfect, right? so here comes the next thing that me and Notorious Nerdy D will disagree about this episode of Raw. I want to set this from the jump, because he'll sit here and tell you all this was a flex of the muscles of how good their production is, and that's all they wanted to do in the intention of this show. And I think that's partially what they wanted to show, was how good our production is. But what I think this was what I call a trick or a trinket that Triple H loves to pull. Triple H's trinkets, right? I said at the end of last year that Triple H does this thing where, like, he'll get away with like 3 to 4 months straight of pretty mid booking, because he'll do one show where he pulls out all the tricks, all the trinkets, and he'll put on one really good show, and everyone will forget the last 3 to 4 months of bad mid programming. And that's what I believe this was, right? You had you had in the 8 weeks between War Games and Royal Rumble, he pulled out 2 trinkets. He pulled out Saturday night's main event, which we're going to get another one in like 15 days, right? 2 weeks from tomorrow, we're getting another Saturday night main event, right? He's going to run 2 of those in the 8 weeks in between the 2 PLEs. And then he's going to run a Raw debut. We wondered why the first Saturday night main event felt a little weak. Why War Games felt a little weak. Well, he saved all the major important moments that could have happened at either of those 2 events till the January 6th debut of Monday Night Raw on Netflix. And this was a trick and a trinket. He booked a PLE on a Monday. We could have done this Saturday, January 4th, called it WWE like day 1, and you had a PLE event given the same event, and everyone would have gone home and like, that was a really good PLE, right? But he just did that. He said, why do that? Let's wait till the debut of Raw on Netflix, and we'll just run a Raw that's booked like a PLE. That's exactly what he gave us. Had no intention of telling storyline. I do believe this was we want to draw the casual fan in. We want to hook some of the new fans in and give them superstars at any time they turn in. But I definitely believe this was booked like a PLE. This was supposed to feel like a PLE, which is why we didn't get a lot of extracurricular storytelling. We didn't get a lot of backstage segments and Raw and R-Truth doing crazy shit backstage, right? We got a PLE on a Monday Night Raw. So from the get-go, that's how I took this show. That's how I'm taking this show. I believe if you watch it and watch the show from that perspective, that this is a PLE on a Monday night, it makes sense as to why things are the way they are. Right? So let's talk about, we get The Rock come out, right? And everyone's like, oh, The Rock went corporate and he sold out and he wasted the story with... He didn't waste the story with Cody. What he did is he accomplished 2 things. He sold the new fans who don't know what's going on Cody Rhodes. Yes. But the second thing, and I think the most important thing, is he showed the depth of the final boss character. That in front of the executives, in front of the people, he's willing to go out there and shake hands and kiss babies and be the politician that this character can be. This is a deep character, right? But behind the scene, when he's in control of the company, the final boss gets the final say. And that's why I believe, right, this could get very interesting with how this is. But I think Cody and Rock will be something they circle back around to after Mania. Now, I've always thought that Cody Rock had to be taken care of before Mania. It doesn't look like they're booking that way, which I think is fine. I think this final boss character is still here. He's just kissing babies and shaking hands right now, like the politician he is, that the character is, right? He knows that in front of the executives, right? The executives aren't going to be there next Monday, right? And so next Monday he could come out and be final boss. But let me sell the world on why The Rock, who owns more stock than anybody else of TKO, why he believes in this company. And let me sell them on Cody Rhodes for a minute and Roman Reigns for a minute, right? Then we get the tribal combat match. And outside of the fact that they called this tribal combat, the match was fine. I didn't have a problem with it. But calling this tribal combat just annoys me. And they did this with the last tribal combat match, dude. It's just call it a no DQ match, right? When you create a special gimmick like this and then you underperform on it, it really just annoys me, right? Because nothing unique happened in this match that doesn't happen at every, no DQ, no holds bar match. And that's all this was a no holds bar match with a fancy name that didn't really live up to the fancy name. But you get the result that I probably wouldn't have booked this, but I understand why they would book it, right? Because this is how you lead to Rock and Roman, right? I'll say this. Hasn't been confirmed yet. I said this in the casual wrestling Discord when we were watching. I'll give them through February the 1st. On Sunday, February the 2nd, if the Mania match is not confirmed, I'm not interested in it, and I'm going to start complaining. We need to confirm this match. We need to confirm this match as soon as possible. That's just me, though, right? But then you get Liv Morgan versus Rhea Ripley for the Women's World Championship, which Rhea Ripley wins back the title, finishes the story between her and Liv. I think this is the right decision. This needed to, and all the crybabies, all the Liv Morgan stands are crying because Rhea's holding everyone. And then the guys, this is how I know people do not understand wrestling and they do not understand storytelling. And I did a whole episode about this. I don't think a lot of the fans, especially newer fans who watch today, understand. And this is why I believe I watch wrestling in the best way possible. And that is, it's a story. And so I think of things through storytelling, right? And so anyone who understands storytelling will understand wrestling if wrestling tells stories, right? So the story was always going to be this. Liv comes in as sort of the baby face of the story in that she gets hurt because of Rhea, right? Well, Liv comes in and says, I'm getting revenge, and I'm going to take everything you have. And in the process of doing so, she becomes the villain. She takes Dominic. She takes the title. She injures Rhea, breaks her nose, beats her. She becomes the villain of the story in the process of getting revenge. And in that process, Rhea Ripley comes back with a strong case against Liv Morgan as to why she should be in the picture still. I need to get my revenge. She took what I had. And the story was always going to end with Rhea ending up on top with the title. This was always how this was supposed to end. Can we recognize story here? This whole story was built to get Rhea Ripley in a place where she didn't need the Judgment Day no more. And the crowd, because the crowd already adored her, just cheered for every time she was coming to the ring. You got her to a place where the cheers matter, right? Liv can get booed. Dominic can get booed. So you have to keep them the bad guys. Rhea's the good guy of the story at the end. And the good guy wins this story, right? That's how storytelling works, right? This was how it was supposed to end. So what's next? Well, I think Liv takes some time off, regroups, maybe possibly, 2-3 months, maybe a month or two of Raquel in the picture. Maybe a Raquel match at Rumble versus Rhea or at Chamber. Ultimately, I think it will come down to the winner of Elimination Chamber will be the WrestleMania match against Rhea. I personally believe it's going to be Bianca Belair. That's just me personally. I think this is the feud that they've been teasing for a while, and I think they're finally going to do it. And I think what's going to happen, a lot of people think Bianca and Jade are going to happen at Mania. I don't think Jade comes back until WrestleMania. I think she's starting to throw some teases out there, but I don't think she officially comes back till WrestleMania, when one of two things happen. Either A, she cost Bianca the championship, or B, Bianca wins the title at Mania, and the SummerSlam match gets set up by Jade attacking her after the fact, right? And then you set up a 3-month feud going into SummerSlam, where you can get Jade versus Bianca for the championship, and that will be the match of that will sort of be the major feature in the women's division. Because that match at this moment, because Jade's not big enough for a match against Bianca in terms of like there's people that like in terms of like her standing in WWE, right? You have to build her back up, right? Because so far her build has been like, I'm here, I can do some matches, I'm partnering with Bianca, I win the tag titles, I get pushed in off the ledge and hurt, and then I come back. You can't just immediately rush her into a Mania match against Bianca. I think one, you need high stakes. That's what the title does as the prop of the match. It's a high stake match. But two, you can get 2 to 3 months of build of her just knocking around women, earning her way to the title. Imagine, heel Bianca saying, Jade, you ain't done nothing. Everything you've done and all your accomplishments have been because of me. You're holding me down. So I had to take matters into my own hands. And if you want this title match, you have to earn it. And Jade Cargill goes and spends the next 3 months leading up till SummerSlam, beating up the entire division, maybe winning Money in the Bank, where I've always felt that a face Money in the Bank cash-in should always be like pre-announced, because that's what the face would do, right? So imagine she wins Money in the Bank and she says, Bianca, I'm not waiting any longer. I'm calling my shot now. Just know this. SummerSlam, I'm coming for you. You versus Jade. As long as you can keep that title, I'm cashing in. I'm winning the title at SummerSlam. That, I believe, is how you can book Bianca versus Jade, right? And so that is, like, for me, Rhea winning this just to get a little bit of a build-up till Mania, where you can set up some new feuds, get the Bianca-Rhea match, where Bianca wins the title, which then leads to Bianca versus Jade at SummerSlam for the title. I think that's the future for that title, right? We then get John Cena, right? He comes in and he's sitting here and he's, doing this really, really, really good promo about how, I haven't won in so many days. And he instead of saying how many years it's been since I've won a match, he uses the large amount of days since he's won a singles match in WWE. And he talks about, I'm going to have to earn this. I don't just get to come back in and call my shot. I have to earn this. And unless I win the lot, right? And this whole thing was meant to set up, hey, I'll see you at Royal Rumble. And the argument is going to be like, is he going to be 1? I think he starts at like pick 15, like go through half the field. I don't think they'll make him go through the whole field. But I do think John Cena's winning the Royal Rumble. I think that's very obvious that John Cena will win the Royal Rumble. That's my belief, right? We then get Jey Uso and Drew McIntyre. That's what we're going to talk about next. And this was a match. It had some superstars in it, but I felt like the entrances are far more remembered than the match itself, which was very, very slow pacing and just mid, right? It was mid, right? It was really, really just bad in my opinion. Like, if I'm calling strikes, this was a bad match. I don't think this match really needed to be on this card. And what made it bad was you put superstars in the ring. Jay by himself has an aura. Drew has an aura. But the story there's really no story here, right? Outside of Drew's just attacking everyone who sort of backs up Cody Rhodes, right? And that's just not a story that I'm compelled with when you don't develop it past that, right? I felt like this could have easily been on the upcoming episode, but we'll talk about that here in a minute. And the next major segment is Hulk Hogan. And he was only here for like what felt like 3 minutes. But these 3 minutes were the longest 3 minutes I bet of his life. Right? He comes out and he just gets absolutely like bro's just here to give a promo on why his beer is partnering with WWE. And this dude gets absolutely booed out of the arena. Now, I have multiple opinions on this. So let's just break this down, right? Y'all know I'm a walking controversy, right? So my first step is y'all need to just respect those, right? Like everyone's talking about how this major event on Netflix. Guys, without Hulk Hogan in the year 1984, you don't get Netflix, right? And I don't understand how with certain people we can overlook the negative they do. Like Undertaker was there, right? Everything that they hate Hulk Hogan for in terms of supporting Donald Trump, Mark Calloway's the same way, right? I don't want to hear this. Well, Hulk Hogan gets all his press with his character name. Well, of course he does. Because no one's going to tune in if the Republican National Convention says Terry Bollea is going to be there. Right? No one's going to tune in to the right. If you're watching The Undertaker's podcast where he goes by Mark Calloway and he invites Donald Trump on, right? If you're a wrestling fan, you're already and you watch the podcast, right? The difference is like, well, Kane doesn't use Kane. Well, it's because you can't run for government official with a pseudonym, right? Like he couldn't run for mayor of Knox County as the Demon Kane. He had to run under his real name, right? That's just common sense, right? But of course, why would you not? Like if you're going to a major event where maybe 20-30% of the people who are there will know who you are, but the rest of them probably don't. Right? Yeah, you're gonna go by, like if he would have went as Terry Bollea, most people wouldn't know what that is, right? But he went as Hulk Hogan because that's the big. It's sort of like what's his name? The owner of Amazon. Can't think of his name off the top of my head. Jeff Bezos. His real name's not Jeff Bezos, but he makes all his money as Jeff Bezos. He actually changed his name, but Jeff Bezos' real last name is Jorgensen. That's what he was born as, Jeff Jorgensen, right? But if he walked around and introduced himself as Jeff Jorgensen, no one's gonna know who the fuck that is, right? There's athletes who change their name, who and go by nicknames or whatever like that, and like Chad Ochocinco, he was known as Ochocinco, but if I called him Chad Johnson, which was his birth name, most people outside of Bengals fans may not even know who Chad Johnson is because that's such a right. But if I said Ochocinco, right, then you know who it is, right? And so I don't have an issue with him going to going and making a brand under Hulk Hogan because that's what he's known by. What I do have an issue with is the lack of respect from the newer generation of fans for especially towards Hogan, right? Because Hogan, is Terry Bollea a shitty dude? Sure, absolutely. Done some pretty questionable things. But so is Ric Flair. So has probably 90% of the wrestlers in the 90s, in the 80s, and even the early 2000s, right? I don't know what you expect the type of character you're going to get from carnies. These are carnies, dude. The 70s and the 80s, these were carnies. These were people who had zero talent anywhere else to go anywhere to make a living. So they go to the one place that would, that would accept them and allow them to make money. These are carnies, dude. I wish that people would be able to distinguish the character from the real person. And Terry Bollea is a shitty dude. Absolutely. But I also think there's, I tend to take people at their word until they show me differently. And I don't know Hulk Hogan personally. I don't know Terry Bollea personally, but he claims to have found religion. And I tend to be a person who I'm willing to give another chance to, right? If you claim to be a different person, I want to give you that chance. But what happens is people see Terry Bollea. Now, I still think he's a grifter. I think real American guys, if y'all know what real American beer is, it's what is known as contract brewing, right? So you can create like a recipe or something. You talk to a contract brewer where you essentially say, hey, we're going to run a contract with you. You can brew it. You can brew our beer in batches and then can it for us, and then we'll sell it. He doesn't brew it himself. His beer is essentially Bud Light that's mass produced, canned in a special can that says Real American Beer on it and put on shelves. But it's nothing special, right? It's called contract brewing, right? You can do that with a lot of different products like coffee. A lot of these influencers who sell you coffee are doing what is known as drop shipping, where essentially it's mass-produced roasted coffee. They all sell the same product. And the only thing that's really different is the bag that comes in where you can customize and put your logo on it and your own designs and stuff like that, right? That's really the only thing that's different, right? It's called drop shipping. And so I just like, yeah, is he a grifter? Does he find avenues to make money? Sure. Absolutely he does. And I'll call him out for that. He's a grifter. Is he a politician backstage? Sure. But that was the culture of the time. Right, I don't think people truly understand the business side of wrestling, right? That especially in the 80s and the 90s when Hulk was doing his thing, that everyone was paranoid about someone else taking their spot. And if your spot got taken, you're not eating, and your kids aren't eating, and your wife's not eating, and you lose the house, and you lose everything, right? That's why a lot of people battled through injury, didn't take time off. They sacrificed everything they did to go on the road 300 days a year to wrestle so that they could feed their kids and feed themselves and feed their families. And it's a sacrifice. And if you lost your spot, you lost your livelihood. And so I don't blame Terry Bollea for being a politician backstage, because that's what you had to do to survive. I don't think people truly understand the business side of what they complain about. Does it make it right that he cost people their careers? No. But in a world that's dog eat dog, it's justifiable. It doesn't make it morally correct. Sure, lying on people, sleeping with other, like what he did to Macho Man and slept with his wife and whatever. Despicable, right? Being caught saying what he said about his daughter's boyfriend and using racial slurs. Despicable. No justification for that. But this idea that like, he buried people's careers and he was a backstage politician. Guys, that was just what you had to do to survive in this business. That's the business. That's the business. Everyone did it. And if you didn't stick around long enough. You had to be a politician backstage. That was the business. That was the business. So I don't understand this like level of disrespect that Hulk Hogan gets, because you can hate Terry Bollea the person, right? But this dude, Hulk Hogan, built the business that we know as sports entertainment today. Without Hulk Hogan and his mass appeal in the 80s, you don't get on TV, you don't get WrestleMania, you don't get the Monday Night Wars. You don't get WrestleManias and SummerSlams and Royal Rumbles and TV deals. You don't get Netflix without Hulk Hogan. And I wish people would. You don't have to you don't have to agree with them. You can hate them as a person, but you at least have to respect what they've done for the business. And if you can't distinguish between character and real life person, you probably shouldn't be watching wrestling. Because right, I think of how many actors that are out there that have done shitty shit, right? Like Kevin Spacey, right? Kevin Spacey did some pretty shady shit, right? I was watching The Negotiator just the other day with Sam Jackson and Kevin Spacey in it, and enjoyed the fuck out of the movie because that's one of my favorite movies. 90% of Hollywood I would disagree with on everything. I think 90% of Hollywood shows up at them Diddy parties for the reason Diddy had the Diddy parties for, right? I don't like 90% of Hollywood, but I can distinguish for the 2 hours or 3 hours that I'm watching a movie between the character that Kevin Spacey played in The Negotiator and Kevin Spacey himself, right? Or like even CM Punk. I disagree a lot with CM Punk's personal ethics and politics, like very much, right? Part of the reason why my original TikTok page got deplatformed. I deleted it, but got completely ruined out of the Wrestle Talk world because I and this is what my second point that got proven was, again, I said this June of 2023 and I continue to get proven right. There's a double standard in wrestling when it comes to conservative people coming out in the public, right? So for those who may be new listeners or don't remember what happened, this whole thing was CM Punk, when he worked for AEW, was in the ring after an event. TV went off, and he was parading a sign that a fan had that was like support, or it was essentially along the lines of like wrestling is for everyone, which is sort of the slogan that the LGBTQ section of the fan base bring to all the shows, right? And I said nothing about the sign. The sign is fine. If that's what you want to believe, that's what you want to believe. Wrestling is for everyone. Everyone should be able to enjoy wrestling. I'll stand by that. I don't have to agree with everything about with the movement that's behind it, but I do believe that everyone should be able to watch wrestling and participate in it, right? However, what I called out was two things. The first one was Tony Khan should not allow political statements to be made in the ring while someone's on the clock. But the second was this was like this wasn't the first time CM Punk made a political statement. He went to Texas, a show in like Austin or something a couple months earlier. At the time, Texas had just passed like a really strict ban on abortion, and he wore a shirt that said like "Keep your hands off of their uterus" or whatever, like and whatever, right? A pro-abortion shirt, right? And I don't really necessarily care what your politics are on that issue. I am very strong in my belief on the issue, in my opinion on it. But this isn't the podcast for that, right? And so I'm not going to sit here and like my critique against it was never about the message he was portraying, right? My message was from a business standpoint. That should not take place. That Tony Khan should be smart enough to not allow divisive messaging to appear on TV or in a show that might alienate part of your fan base, right? Because if you've never been to an AEW show before, right, before the show starts, they air a big thing that before it goes on TV that talks about like, welcome to the show. We want everyone to feel respected. Please don't discriminate against this, that, right? This big warning message, right? Well, here's my thing. You got to have that same thing. Like you can't put on a product that sides towards one side of your fan base because there's going to be fans that may be uncomfortable with it, right? And so I also think you can be entertaining without bringing in politics, right? And this set TikTok on fire, right? Oh, you're the one politicizing the message, this, that, and the third. And they missed my entire point. My entire point was that the double standard in the wrestling fan base is that if someone who's farther left, more liberal, more leftist, progressive, right, and has like a pro-abortion or a pro-LGBT message, I'm not arguing against the message. I'm just saying it shouldn't be allowed to take place by the workers. Fans can bring whatever they want. You can't stop that, right? But your workers shouldn't try to alienate the other side of the fans that disagree. And that the double standard is if someone like a Jake Hager, who and I don't want to like bring, or Chris Jericho, to my knowledge, a little bit farther right on the political spectrum, right? If someone like referee Drake Wirtz, who goes on the indie scene and wrestles in the hardcore scene, is Drake Younger, right? He worked for NXT for a little bit until COVID, and when he either got released or didn't resign, I don't fully know the whole situation, but or someone like Jackson Riker, or someone Kane, now we see with Hulk Hogan these people who are a little bit farther right politically and represent the other side of the aisle. If they come on, they don't even have to represent their political beliefs on TV. You'll just boo them and try to get them fired off TV. Like he came in with his beer shirt on, right? Hogan was wearing his beer shirt. He had a MAGA shirt when he got there. He could have worn that on TV. I'm pretty certain Netflix and everyone else told him not to, because that's how you do good business. Tony should take a lesson from that, right? But he came out there. He was there to promote his beer, but they saw his politics and they saw the negative in his past, and they booed him for it. They booed him for it. But guys, there's a person in Florida right now who is a wrestling trainer, who's a little bit left politically, supports the wrestling is for everybody movement, who is a known sex offender, who trains teenagers to wrestle in Florida right now, double standard or not. And people are calling for him to be removed, but he's not. They're not pushing hard enough against it. Right? There's a double standard in wrestling. There's a double standard in the wrestling fan base. And we saw it on Monday night. And whether you like Hogan personally or not, you have to respect his work. And if I'm WWE, I hope this rumor is correct. I hope this rumor is correct. That they plan to turn him heel. And if all it does is just do what happens with Jericho whenever Jericho comes in, and he just gets booed, and it just draws a reaction, guys, there will be a louder reaction than 90% of the mid-card on SmackDown. If Hulk Hogan showed up tonight on SmackDown, it would draw a louder reaction than 95% of the rest of the show, and that's all that matters in this business. That's all that matters. So you think y'all did great by booing Hogan, and he might have had his ego hurt a little bit. But if they turn him heel, he doesn't have to wrestle. But if they turn him heel and he comes out and he cuts some sort of scathing promo and makes a babyface, send out a babyface that tells him, Hulk, we don't want you here, this, that, and the third, and make a superstar out of it, it's worth it. It's worth it. So let's move on to the last segment. It's their main event. It's CM Punk and Seth Rollins. And what was a decent match. I wouldn't say it was like a 10 out of 10. It was a decent match. Punk gets the victory. I think this is the end of the story. I do. I think they wrap this up here. I think Punk goes in and he sets up I think he starts going after Gunther. Maybe gets a title match with Gunther at like Chamber or at Rumble. He can either win the title, which will make him champion and can set him up. So my initial predictions right now, Punk isn't champion, and he's my last update to my early predictions is like a team Cody versus team Triple H. I don't think that happens, but there's still a story you can tell with that. So until that thread gets cut out, I'm still going to hold on to that match because I think that match will be great. A 4-on-4 match to main event WrestleMania night 2, or excuse me, night 1. But I still think you can get something where Cena wins the Rumble, Punk wins the title off of Gunther, and Cena versus Punk main events night 1 of WrestleMania. I think that would be crazy. So that's my second option, I believe. My last real thing about Raw, real quick, is at first I was upset they couldn't find time for Dakota Kai and Lyra Valkyria. Because to me, it felt like this is your debut. You have a whole bunch of new audience tuning in. You could really help these two women get over. I think it's going to main event on Monday. And I think that's better for them. This gives, I think there's only going to be 4 matches. You'll have probably 2.5, 3 hours still. You'll have all the time in the world to tell stories, get back to business as usual, and really give this match the time it deserves. And so I'm not as upset. I'm not as upset that Dakota and Lyra got pushed off of this card because I do think they're main eventing. That's going to be the major staple of the night. I think they get 30 minutes. I think, as much as I love Dakota Kai, I think Lyra Valkyria is winning this because what I think it's going to set up is her versus Becky Lynch at Mania. And we're going to sort of continue that feud from NXT where Lyra took the title off of Becky and Becky's going to try to get right because it's now the only title in the company outside of the North American, with the women's North American and NXT, right? Becky used to have all the titles, right? She's won the NXT, all the main roster ones, but now they got the 2 mid-card ones, really 3 mid-card ones that she hasn't won yet. And I think that could be her little, her side quests for the rest of her career, try to win those 3 titles. So when she retires, she can be one of holding every single title in the company. So I do think Lyra versus Becky is a better story, and I think that's what we build to, just personally. I mean, I'm happy that I think they main event next Monday night. So let's move real quick to NXT. We'll move real quick to NXT, and then we have 2 other things that I want to talk about. So NXT, we start the night, and Julia becomes champion, just like we predicted, right? Julia becomes champion, just like we predicted. And I liked the match. It was good. The show as a whole was a typical episode of NXT. Very, very, very good, right? You know how I feel about it, right? The next match, we get Stephanie Vaquer winning this, the Fatal 4-Way against Lola Vice, Kalani, and for some reason the last name is slipping me right now of who was in this. For the number 1 contendership for the women's North American title. Stephanie Vaquer wins. I like that decision. I do. The next match, we have the 3rd women's match in a row, so we just get baddie after baddie after baddie after baddie after baddie. And Shotzi Blackheart, I'm now going just by Shotzi, right? But she wins for her team. And let me tell you, this pairing of Shotzi and Tatum and Gigi, perfect. Just perfect. Love it. Right, but Shotzi pins Fallon Henley, the North American champion, right? The women's North American champion gets pinned by Shotzi, right? So we go and we come back to a back behind the scenes segment. Stephanie gets sort of approached by Ava, and they're talking about this match, and Shotzi comes up and says, "I pinned Fallon. I should be number 1 contender." And Stephanie's like, "But I just won that." And Fallon sort of gives this idea of like, well, why don't y'all fight it out and I'll take what's left. Right? So next week y'all can fight this out and then I'll get what's left when you're done. And so next week we get Shotzi versus Stephanie, and I think that's gonna be a banger of a match. I do. Right? Lexus wins the Heritage Cup. He wins it clean. He wins the sudden death. Good little redemption story here for Lexus King. Fantastic, right? And then we end the night of wrestling with Oba as the ruler of NXT in a really good match with some story behind Eddie Thorpe and getting attacked by Oba and all of that, right? But then we end the night with the promo from The Rock. Very weird promo. I don't think he had anything planned. I probably wouldn't do that again with The Rock because Lord knows what Rock will say. But yeah, it was a really weird way to end NXT. But as far as everything outside of what The Rock did, other than The Rock and the Ethan Page promo, that was fun. That was fun in the middle of the show. But this promo at the end, we didn't really necessarily need it. We really didn't. So overall, debut week was really fun, right? It was really fun. You get 4 title changes. It's a reset on the company to start the new year, heading into the new stories that are being told. I enjoyed debut week a lot. So let's talk about my last 2 things, and we'll do this real quick. So the first little rant I want to go on is WWE has this weird obsession of accommodating Pat McAfee at the cost of their own product. Pat McAfee's not needed on commentary. He's just not. He doesn't add anything to the show. In fact, oftentimes he takes away from. I love Pat McAfee. I'm not a hater of McAfee. I love him on College Game Day. Do not like him on Monday Night Raw. I think he takes away from moments at times because he doesn't know how to shut the fuck up sometimes. And a lot of times, so I've always said this, the job of a commentator is to tell stories. The job of a commentator in wrestling is to tell the story of the match. Pat doesn't know how to do that. He doesn't know how to do that. He just says some fun, stupid shit at times. And maybe casual fans react better to that. But for someone like me who cares about storytelling, I need someone like Michael Cole can give me the story. Joe Tessitore is really good at giving me the story. I can't wait to hear him on Smackdown tonight. Right? But because of Pat McAfee coming back, you don't have a place for someone like Corey Graves. So Corey Graves gets sent down to NXT to commentate, which I was happy about. I love Corey Graves. I thought he could be a great addition to the booth. We get a 3-man booth in NXT. That'd be great. Booker's great. Booker T's my favorite commentator in wrestling right now. Vic Joseph is right behind him. The NXT booth was great. You add a Corey Graves, it could only get better. But it just that Corey Graves didn't fit because that chemistry wasn't. And it'll work out. It'll work out. I just, bro, how are you going to send Corey Graves down to NXT? Just because I'm not a big fan of Pat McAfee on WWE programming. I like him coming back for big events like Mania and doing like 1 or 2 matches, or maybe just one night, or right. But having him there week after week after week, I'm already tired of him after. And I think it's a detriment to the product to have him there, right? Because he just says some stupid shit sometimes, and he's right, and he's untamable. Like you can't tell him what to do, and I think that's dangerous because his whole job is to tell stories, and he's not a very good storyteller. He takes away from moments at times, right? Now, the last rant that I want to talk about is the greatest travesty known to mankind, and that is Rhea Ripley going goth. Bro, how do you take a diamond? And Rhea Ripley was absolutely stunning in 2017. Long blonde hair, beautiful, for me, athletically toned, right? Just absolutely beautiful. And then you color on it. And I'm not anti-tattoo, right? If you have arm sleeves, I think that's sexy, right? But once you start getting tattoos on like your chest and your stomach and the legs, now you're doing too much, right? Like, and I don't mind goth. Like being goth is not necessarily negative. I just praised Gigi and Tatum. Shotzi to me overdoes it. But Shotzi also isn't necessarily a diamond without the tattoos either, right? So for Shotzi, it fits. But for Rhea had potential to be the next Charlotte Flair. And she's still stunning. Like she went from like a 9. So let me break down this scale, right? Because here's the WETOODEEP 1 out of 10 scale, right? 1 is ugly. 2 is aight. 3 is okay. 4 is basic. 5 is average. That's cute, right? 5 is cute. 6 is beautiful. 7 is hot. 8 is sexy. 9 is rare. 10 is perfect. Guess what? 10s don't exist. There's no such thing as perfect. 9s are rare for a reason. There's not a lot of them, right? So most women who think they're 10s, they're probably actually closer to like a 7 or an 8, right? But Rhea Ripley without the tattoos, like 2017 Mae Young Classic Rhea Ripley, she's like a 9. Tattoo 2024 version Rhea Ripley, who looks like Chris Motionless, she's like a 7. Like, she's stunning, right? And that same, by the way, in the same spectrum, like 10s don't exist, 1s also don't exist. Ugly doesn't exist to me, right? Now there's a lot of girls in like the 3s, right? But ugly doesn't exist and perfect doesn't actually exist, right? But you have to put them on the spectrum in case there is just the possibility of something like that happens, right? But like Rhea Ripley went from like rare beauty to like putting some ink on her, and I'm not against ink, get tattooed. Like, certain people I think tattoos work good on. Rhea Ripley, though, could have been Charlotte Flair. And she didn't want to be. She wanted to differentiate herself. And now you're seeing who's going to be the major star of 2025. Not like Rhea Ripley hasn't had a great career, right? Like, I'm not taking this away from her, but I think it's the greatest. Imagine like current Rhea Ripley, but with beautiful blonde hair and no tattoos on like the stomach, chest area, and the legs. Bruh, that's a 10 to me. I'm just saying, it's a travesty. It's a travesty. I think it also limits like the type of extracurricular work outside of wrestling you can do. Like, Becky Lynch is going to be in the new Happy Gilmore movie. Rhea Ripley's not going to get that part, right? And if she does get that part of the movie, she's going to be like a motorcycle gangster. Like, she's going to be in some like motorcycle. I mean, she could be in Mayans, right? If they have like a Mayans Australia, right? She could be in that. Or like she could be in like NCIS Sydney, the new version of NCIS they have that takes place in Australia. And she could be one of like the villains that like kill people, because that's what her character could resemble. But like, she's not going to be like a good guy in any movie, right? You think so? I don't think so. Like, she just doesn't. I think it limits the roles you can play outside of wrestling. I think it's a travesty that she took perfection, almost perfection, right? She had a diamond, and no one stopped and told her like, "Hey, for your career, let's not do that." Right? Another travesty is Cora Jade. While I'm on this, I made this post the other day on Twitter. This may be a hot take. Cora Jade's tits are too big. They're too big for her body. And they're sort of like to the point of like, bruh, that's too much. And again, someone didn't tell her, you might want to stop. Right? Like, where she was before, like, yeah, I get it. But like, you went too big with the implants. That's my take of it. That's my hot take of the day. That's how we'll end this. Thank y'all for watching this episode of the Slapping Me Wrestling Podcast. It's going to be a good year here in 2025. Don't forget, Women's Pro Wrestling Action will actually start tonight. Probably is already posted by the time this gets posted as well. Don't forget to go and tune into that, as well as Tuesday, me and Wavy D will be right back in the saddle with a new episode of the Slapping Me Wrestling Podcast. That is on Tuesday. Until then, y'all have a great week. Have a great weekend, and I will see y'all on Tuesday.
So hit that subscribe, come along for the ride. AEW, WWE, we're always on side. From fantasy booking to baddies that slay. Slapping me wrestling every Tuesday.